Today's gospel comes from the Gospel of Mark in chapter 9. And while I read it, maybe pay attention to see if you might find a custom of the Israelites within it. There just may be one or more. So we start with Mark chapter 9, verse 30. They left the house and passed through Galilee. Jesus did not want anyone to know where they were because he was teaching his disciples. He said to them, "The Son of Man is going to be betrayed into the hands of men. They will kill him, and after 3 days he will rise." But they did not understand what he meant and were afraid to ask him about it. They came to Capernaum. When he was in the house, he asked them, "What were you arguing about on the road?" But they kept quiet because on the way they had argued about who was the greatest. Sitting down, Jesus called the 12 and said, "If anyone wants to be first, he must be the very last and the servant of all." He took a little child and had him stand among them. Taking him in his arms, he said to them, "Whoever welcomes one of these little children in my name welcomes me. And whoever welcomes me does not welcome me, but the one who sent me." Here ends the gospel reading. You find any custom in or Jewish customs in there? Would you believe sitting down? It was customary for the rabbi or a teacher to be sitting when he was teaching. The disciples knew this. They knew he had changed. When they were walking, he was one person. He sat down. Now he's someone else. And there's a different tenor to the whole conversations that continue after that.
Thank you, Ralph. I just feel like you should stand and I should sit, though. This just doesn't feel right. So, what is one thing you are great at? I'm not talking, all right at that, or I'm pretty good at that. What is something you are great at? Interesting phenomenon I've discovered that if you ask a small group of people this very question and you wait for everyone to give an answer, you're going to be there a while. Except this morning after the first service, a little girl came running right up to me to tell me what she was great at. But most people, if you're older than 5, after being asked this question, struggle to answer it. Nobody wants to brag, or some people just believe they're not great at anything. Greatness. Boy, oh boy, it is something with which us humans have a real love-hate relationship. Today, Ralph just shared with you a reading about how the disciples argued over who was the greatest. And you know, the really interesting thing is the disciples have just admitted they didn't understand what Jesus was trying to teach them. They admitted they didn't get it, and then they started to argue about who was the greatest. There's a sermon in there too. I don't get that one. But as they were arguing about what they were the greatest at, Jesus comes up and says, "So what are you guys talking about?" They were embarrassed. They didn't want to say. And so this awkward silence just kind of hung in the air. I totally get that. I mean, seriously, can you imagine that Jesus all of a sudden walks up next behind you? What are you thinking? You know, or you know you were doing something wrong and he heard you. Oh man, how embarrassing. We get scared. We get embarrassed. We get ashamed. And we can't tell Jesus how important it is for us to feel great. Jesus already knows this. The disciples did not have to say one word to Jesus for Jesus to know exactly what they were talking about. Jesus knew. So he sat in their awkward silence and then lovingly responded. Jesus just challenged them to be a servant of all. I mean, that's all it takes to be great? A servant of all? And then, as a visual aid to really drive his point home, Jesus picked up a small child. Children were considered property back then, not real live human beings. Picked up a child, embraced and held this little one, and he taught his disciples to welcome little ones just like he was doing right then and there. You see, the argument the disciples were having over who was the greatest, that conversation was one born in fear and misunderstanding. We humans can get so confused and sidetracked regarding greatness because we are pursuing a false understanding of what it is. You know, please hear me loud and clear here. There is nothing wrong with wanting to be great, to be the greatest. It's just how we define greatness. About 10 years ago or more, there was a video out on YouTube. It showed a small group of individuals from one political party secretly attending a large rally of the opposite political party on environmental issues. The small group of people went around in this big rally trying to get signatures on a petition to ban a supposedly really dangerous chemical. Petition said that this chemical was largely unregulated. It had been detected in our water supply and in countless food items. A person could die within minutes if this chemical was inhaled in a substantial quantity. The chemical in that petition was described with a very scary sounding name. It was called dihydrogen monoxide. Y'all may know it better in its chemical formula, H2O. Yeah, water. Think about it. Every single thing in that petition was absolutely spot on. Water is largely unregulated. It is in many foods and beverages, and of course in our wells, our faucets, and our rivers. Water can also be very dangerous. It can cause death if inhaled in even small quantities. So folks at the rally signed the petition, a petition that was purposely framed in fearful, misleading, and deceptive ways. And all of this was caught on video. Folks signing a petition to ban water. Now, the purpose of the video, supposedly, was to show how fear-mongering can lead us to accept unnecessary and absurd viewpoints without even realizing it. But I think a more concealed goal was to show one political party acting in a ridiculous manner. The video was designed so one political party could look at the other political party and point to them and joke about how dumb or stupid or less than they were and how great their party was. Now, all of this was framed as a meaningful political experiment. And maybe it was, but really what I think it was, people arguing over who was the greatest. Now, as I mentioned, this video was something that was shot about 10 or more years ago. So certainly nothing like that would ever happen today, right? Jesus reminds us in this passage today that being great is all about living to serve, not to compete, not to ridicule, not to despise. Greatness is about serving others. Greatness is about building others up. Greatness is about how we can build a community together even when we have very different ideas. Greatness is about welcoming those who have a need that they can't meet themselves. And am I right or what? Nothing feels better than humbling ourselves and serving others. Just think about that. Think about how you feel when you have taken food to someone who's too sick to cook for themselves. Or think about how you feel, that sacred bond that you get when you just sit and listen to someone talk and you don't try to tell them what to do or where they're wrong or judge them for it. Just that sacred connection that happens when you serve by listening. Think about how great it felt when you mowed that neighbor's lawn or secretly shoveled their driveway. Serving. Greatness. Feels great. You are great. God created you to be great. So own it. Claim it. Practice it. May it be so for you and for me. Amen.